Good evening, everyone, and once again, welcome to another one of our live panel discussions here at the JeopardyFan.com. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating this discussion. I'll do my best to keep my own opinions out of things tonight, just, because I think I got accused of armchairing too much last time, so I'll try not to do that this time, but we have a jam-packed panel tonight. I'm going to go, let's see, let's go in no particular order. Let's start off with the champion of the 2014 Jeopardy Tournament of Champions, Ben Ingram. We also have a second place, Arthur Chu, third place,
Hello.
Julia Collins. And also from the tournament, we have Sandie Baker, Mark Jappinga. And from the final wager, we have Keith Williams, my co-blogger at the JeopardyFan.com, Jeannie Kenkel. We also have Leanne Roberts joining us for the first time. We finally have video for Leanne. Welcome. Thank you for finally being able to join us. Leanne was also mentioned on Keith's blog recently as being in one of the most competitive Jeopardy games of all time. And finally, giving some numbers, we have Brandon Saunders. No relation. He had some excellent points last time, so we're happy to have him back. So, in case you missed the last couple weeks of Jeopardy, I've already mentioned it, our champion is Ben Ingram. He will be doing a Reddit Ask Me Anything in just under an hour. So if you have any questions, you can ask him there, or you can ask him here. You can leave a comment on our website at thejeopardyfan.com if you'd like to ask a question for him, or any of the other panelists, actually. But yes, so Ben Ingram won, Arthur Chu came second, Julia came third. I thought the final was pretty amazing. What do you guys think of be up there playing in the final?
I had fun. Oh, go ahead.
It was a thrill a minute, it felt like it went by so fast, so it's hard to analyze, But it was really tense, but it was really fun the whole time. It was just a higher level of difficulty, in competition than I think any of us had played before. So.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, sure, being up there sure beats watching from home. So.
I didn't feel tense at all, which is weird because I think the very first time I played was the most tense I was, but the more I played, the less tense I got, and the less angry and frustrated with myself I got. So this was literally the most fun I ever had playing, even though the stakes were the highest of all and the competition might have been the best of all that day. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Now, a few of you were in the audience for it. What do you guys think? Jeannie was in the audience. Keith was in the audience. Sandie, Mark, I think you guys were still there. So what do you guys think of the final from the audience?
Oh, it was exciting. It was fun to watch. I really liked I had no idea who to root for or anything. I was just enjoying the game.
I think at the end of the second game, I was about as nervous as I had been at any point on Jeopardy, and I wasn't playing. So
really, wow,
work up there.
Yeah, it was really exciting to be there and to witness some really great episodes of Jeopardy be filmed.
Yeah, when I asked around at the pub that night, not many people could answer that Shakespeare final, so it's a tough one.
Yeah. I had an English professor who bought me the complete works of Shakespeare. I asked how much she paid for it. She said nothing. I had it lying around. And then I asked her, did she get the final right? She said, no. No one in the department got it right. So that made me feel a little bit better.
No one cares about Pericles, and even if you do, no one remembers the subtitle of Pericles, Prince of It's the hardest possible.
And I've been thinking about it. I was reading a little bit about the play, and it's not in the first folio. And I definitely remember thinking, oh, these things that aren't part of the first folio, I'm not really going to worry about as much.
Shakespeare
But the thing
Shakespeare didn't even write it. It was like he script doctored the second half of it,
Exactly. And I thought Pericles was Athenian, but that's a different Pericles. First thing I thought of was Pericles. Because I had gotten it wrong, I'd gotten it meta wrong because I mixed up Pericles with Timon of Athens. Go figure. I didn't work hard enough on Shakespeare, I guess, although I worked pretty hard, but not at the proper level, I guess, not TOC level.
fun. Yeah, think about it though. If you'd spent all that extra time studying Shakespeare, would that have taken away from time for studying other stuff that could have, caused you a problem if you didn't know it?
Oh yeah, that was me in sports. Like I talked about this. There were no sports in the entire TOC, and there have been in past TOCs, but there were no. And I worked so hard on trying to not suck at sports, and it was always, completely. And this is the first time I've ever gotten a Shakespeare clue wrong on Jeopardy. Like watching it or playing, like I didn't think I needed to work on Shakespeare at all. So there you go.
Now I just want to point out, to Arthur's point, I did go back through the archive. There were a couple of scattered sports-related questions throughout the tournament. I know Julia got one on the Grey Cup and the game that Doug Flutie was the MVP of 3 times. Let's see. There was one. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer required knowing 2 sports people in the not quite a top band category. There were a couple of other sports questions scattered throughout the event, but I think I counted 4, and that was being generous.
I have a story about that Grey Cup question. So the day after I lost, there was a guy who played named Peter Diakowski, and he had played in the Grey Cup the previous season, and he and Alex talked about it in their interview, and that is the only reason that I know that the Grey Cup exists, so I have the very nice Peter and Alex to thank for that one.
My high school classmate won a couple of Grey Cups, and you didn't know it existed?
Why would I?
No offense.
If I don't care about American football, why would I care about Canadian football? I'm not Canadian.
Ooh.
I need to quit asking you about odds and stuff then.
And also to ask me to say anything positive about the Packers ever is just not a good idea.
My bad.
There was another funny moment. Sitting next to me for the taping of the finals was Theodore Bickel, who had received an Academy Award nomination for his role in The Defiant Ones, which was a clue in the morning session. And Alex made kind of a big deal about that. But I think he's 90, and he was there with his wife and stepchildren, and he seemed to enjoy it. I talked to him after. He had never seen it before and had a lot of fun. I imagine that's the experience that a lot of people go and have them when they go to see the show.
You know what that reminds me of? Remember at the beginning of the second day of taping, which would have been last Monday's show, and someone brought in a big, huge package, and they opened it up and took the bubble wrap off, and it was another Emmy that Jeopardy won.
Wow.
So they were delivered an Emmy right there on the stage, and people were, like all the staff, ooh, can I touch it? But they wouldn't let the contestants touch it. Too bad.
So I guess for everyone who was in the tournament, I should ask, how satisfied are you guys with your performance in the Tournament of Champions, all 5 of you?
That's a loaded question.
Do we start with the guy who won?
Yeah, I was asking if Ben is satisfied first.
Well,
Ben, are you satisfied with your performance?
Well, I think everybody should be satisfied with their performance because it was a great competition, and I think everyone played the best they could under the circumstances. I know I certainly did. So no matter what the outcome was or could have been, I think everyone should be proud. Great tournament.
I think overall I'm satisfied, because I got to the tournament, I made it to the semifinals. I really, there was this moment right at the end of our semifinal game where I looked at the scores and I'm like, oh, dang, he just wiped the floor with me. What the heck? But, that was like about 2 seconds, and then I was back to like, hey, I made the tournament. It's all good.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I mean, everybody knows how I got in. So when that happens, I think you go in with being happy to be there. And I really wanted to get out of the quarterfinals. I wanted to prove that I belong there by getting through one game, and I did that. And then Arthur was better than me in the semis, and Rebecca was really good too. And so I was happy with how it turned out.
I mean, I can't say that I don't wish I had won because $150,000 is a lot of money. So, but I did go in kind of feeling like there were some expectations being put on me, and I felt like, if it came down to, losing Final Jeopardy against Ben, that was almost like what I kind of expected. That I proved that I could do the things I knew I could do well, and then, I always knew there were some weaknesses in my game, and 12 out of 13 Final Jeopardies in a row is a record, and there's, I can't touch that, and so it is what it is.
I think Arthur was the fastest player I ever faced there. Julia was second, and I think John Pearson was third. And of course, you can't hit the button if you don't know your onions. So my hat's off to everybody.
Okay. Now, speaking of Arthur's comment about 12 for 13, I have one question from Therese Berry, who posted on our website, and it's for Ben, and she's looking for some comments on your water for elephants surprise. It almost sounded like you swore on live television.
I said, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" That's what it looks like. Are you serious? That's what it was. But I stopped myself after the serious because I realized that he was. I had no idea what the right response was. I'll admit I wanted that one. I wanted to get that 11th Final Jeopardy because I knew Ken Jennings had gotten 10 in a row. So I just wanted to see if I could do some kind of show for myself because I knew I was going to go before the Arthur and Julia firing squad. But I thought Water for Elephants took place like pre-World War I. So that's why I was surprised.
Okay. Another question I actually got before the handout again, or the hangout again, it's for Ben. Regarding your interview about I bought a bed. One question I got: what bed did you buy? And not just size, brand as well. This one's from Vishala from Toronto.
Hey, Toronto. I bought one of those like space age foam type things because the old one, the springs were so loud that if you moved, it would wake you up. So I bought the kind where you could put like the champagne glass on one side and then you can jump on the other side and it wouldn't move. And I didn't get a California King because I'm so used to sleeping with my feet hanging off the end of the bed that I didn't want to go long, in other words. So I just, it's a pretty cool deal. I didn't mean to like brag about my bed or anything, but
hey, you talked about it on the show.
Deal. Well, yeah, I talked about it on the show, but it's a good investment.
Okay, fair enough. That's thank you very much. I have to say, all of you, the wagering was. I found it was pretty much impeccable for the most part. I didn't cringe at all the entire 2 weeks. I don't think Keith really cringed much at all the 2 weeks either. I just kudos for all of you guys and the wagering. We were treated to some excellent performances in that department. And going back, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't watched today's yet, but you're going to be reminded that it's a regular episode.
So you really don't think I should have wagered $0 on both of those finals? Because I think so.
Well, the thing is, though, Arthur, it's a confidence. The day one certainly was a confidence thing, and if you thought you knew about presidential elections, I say go for whatever you feel comfortable doing. And day two, I think you obviously had to bet something because you were behind at that point, and you needed to be right and Ben needed to be wrong. So betting everything there's no problem there. I had no problem with your wagers in the final.
All right, I think so.
But actually, kind of the reason why I brought that up, these stories gone around about how Julia took 15 minutes to come up with her wager in semifinal number one, and Keith said he would have taken longer. So I'm sure you have some thoughts about your first semifinal, the semifinal, Julia. So if you want to go through what was going through your mind on that wager in the semifinal.
Yeah, well, the first minute or two was doing the math. I did it wrong the first time, which was I had some consistent adding problems on Wednesday, I kept adding like 1 and 2 and getting 4 because my brain wasn't working, which is a special part of the tournament for me. But I mean, I evaluated. I thought about all 3 of the scenarios that Keith maps out in his recap from that game, and then I spent the rest of the time just thinking about what I was going to do. You can kind of see some clips of me doing it in one of the videos from the tournament. I'm just kind of like leaning on the podium, twirling the pen, because I just wasn't sure what to do, and I thought, Jared and Terry might bet 0. I thought they probably would. Jared, I knew was good at geography. We've been talking earlier in the morning about how he'd been in the geography bee, and I thought, well, he might have a really high confidence level with this, and think, I don't know, it was the mind games that people talk about, and unfortunately, they psyched me out, but fortunately, I got the right response. But I wrote 0 on the light card before I pressed enter. I thought Maggie to clear it out, and that was after Alex was like, "What's taking you so long?" And then they were like, "Okay, yeah, you have to be done now." So it was a tough decision, and like I said, even at the last second, I had a change of heart, and I thought, betting 0 would just not be true to how I play the game. I'm not gonna go down on the called third strike. No, that's just not me. That's not how I play. Not how I wanted to go out of that tournament. So, it was a tough decision, though.
Whom was I sitting next to in the audience? It was either you, Sandie, or Rebecca. And I did the math in my head, and I thought everybody was going to wager 0. I thought we were going to say 3 balls. So that means I underestimated you, Julia, and I apologize for that. Underestimated
stupid risks that I'm willing to take. I mean, I almost did it. I wrote that 0 on the screen, and
I think that it was an absolutely fascinating situation that didn't look that way on first glance, and I have to give props to all 3 of you in that game for what you guys did, and again, I thought it played pretty well, and I also thought you guys did very well on what seemed like more difficult material, and I think we can all agree that was a very 2 weeks of difficult boards. Do we have any?
Selfishly, in a tournament, you hope for what they call bad beats in poker. You hope that a good player just gets unlucky, so that you have to face someone who's not as skilled, and that didn't happen. We got the final where I felt like I was going to hit the biggest challenge that I ever had, which is great for the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, Andy, we got 4 clues left in Double Jeopardy. Should we start watching now?
Yeah, you should start watching. You should start watching now, Keith. You're going to have some fun. As you can see, there's a daily double left.
I haven't been watching.
Okay. There's 1 daily double left at this point, with 4 clues left in Double Jeopardy, Keith. So you can guess where it's coming.
And they start at the top too.
Yeah, of course they start at the top.
Nice work.
They just work top to bottom. It's like watching. It's.
I got a question about
amateurs
that.
Again. No offense if you were on today's show and are watching today.
I got a question about that. Were there any clues left on the board at all?
No.
Because if so, there were not. If so, then that board strategy was overrated because got through all the clues. At least my strategy was. Because late in the game, if I was up, I would go up and pick off the low-value clues, try to sit on my lead. If I was down, I'd go down. But it didn't matter. So I think that was overworked. So I think strategy was overrated. I think it just came down to speed and what you knew.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about a lot of strategies in Jeopardy. They work for only when you're playing regular season, because things like the forest bounce, running around the 4 corners, trying to disrupt everybody. It works when it's just a new person. When you see the person at the podium and you're like, oh my goodness, they're the champion, and it's your first time on TV and you're like, oh, it's so much smaller in person, but there's Alex Trebek. When you come back to the Tournament of Champions, everybody's been doing that. So none of those strategies really work, which is why I was really interested to see how everybody would play. And it turns out everybody played the same exact way. I thought it was good.
I mean, it's especially... Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I don't know. I had thought about that too, though, because I think it worked to some extent because I was rewatching my Arthur game and forgot that I did this, but like wasn't going to the. I like went up to a $400 clue, and I could have gone back to that battle category and got the daily double, and that might have helped. Though it was the only one I knew in the game. So it's like little things in terms of keeping it consistent, but I do generally agree that like the strategy doesn't matter as much when the competition is this good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I mean, it was very clear that we were going to clear the boards once they started telling us to slow down when they'd have to stop.
I forgot about that.
Wow.
So it's like, I mean, I jumped around more during the finals because I thought it doesn't matter. We're going to see all the clues. Who cares? I mean, I wasn't confused. What's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, especially it's not only that there was a tournament of champions, but the people who made the semis, the people who made the finals. I remember seeing a lot of their runs, and it was always just, especially Arthur. I mean, like you were like, it was like one sentence. It was like, what is Wellington 800? It was like I knew it was gonna be ultra quick, but I mean, the only thing that really you can have an effect on, in my opinion, strategy-wise, in a tournament like that, is clue selection, where you try to play defensively by getting daily doubles off the board, and that's what I saw a lot from people. So that's to me, that's really the only thing that you can affect, and obviously wagering and all that nonsense. But you know.
Mm-hmm.
That having been said, Arthur, you kept bouncing.
That's what I do. It's you know, it would be unnatural for me not to do that, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but, you know, it's fun. Yeah.
I didn't think so.
I actually hurt myself in the semis by doing that, because if I'd stayed in the Odin category, I would have gotten that daily double away from Rebecca, but she managed to get it. You know, so it doesn't always, you know, the advantage where it's about like throwing people off didn't really help as much, you know, and maybe I would have benefited from staying within one category, but it's just how I'm used to playing, so.
Yeah, I know some people who trivia-wise don't like a whole bunch of things in the same category. Like, they can't do like 10 geography questions in a row and then like 10 like, you know, history questions in a row. They like it like, you know, it's like a, you know, like a quiz, you know, like a pub trivia, or like, you know, like the Jeopardy test almost. I actually prefer taking that kind of those kinds of series of questions to just, okay, here's 5 about like Marilyn Monroe or whatever, and then, you know, going down like that. So I see where Arthur's coming from. It makes a lot of sense.
It's a lot easier to watch when people go straight down. I mean, I was watching my own games, and I was like, I can't watch this stuff anymore. As a matter of fact, my mom and I watched my last game, Mark, and your first, and I think we both started at 600.
I think I ended up stealing that from you because you were doing it, and I was wondering how I was going to bounce. And then I was like, oh, I like this whole like starting at 600 and going down, because you keep like some of the order. I like a little bit of order. Because my favorite part on Jeopardy was still when I ran a category straight down, and we couldn't do that in the tournament.
Good point.
Okay, moving on to another question I got. It doesn't quite have to do with the Tournament of Champions, but Michael Willie, he was part of our hangout group a few weeks ago when the quote unquote Ryan's rumor, which became Ryan's truth, regarding the no longer allowing ties on Jeopardy. What does the panel think about the fact that Jeopardy will no longer allow ties moving forward in regular season games?
I mean, anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I'm clearly devastated by this. I mean, as a contestant, as a watcher, it makes things more exciting, obviously, because who doesn't want to see a tiebreaker like we saw with Jeff and Alan and before. But as a player, I mean, like, if you're going on with the intention of building a streak, and I know, I've tweeted at Keith about this, and Keith is another tie guy, bet to tie guy. But when you take away that, it takes away such a big part of getting inside your opponent's head with the wagering, because I mean, for those who are watching who might not know, a bet to tie sometimes kind of can coax bigger wagers out of the person in second. If they think that you're going to bet to tie, then they'll be more likely to risk everything, and then that can help on the downside if you both get it wrong. And I think that is just such a smart thing to do that I didn't even realize for a while. And and I think that the removal of that like I said, while it's going to make it much more exciting to watch as a prospective contestant if they ever decide to change rules or whatever, it makes things a lot stickier for trying to build a much longer streak.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to put the camera on Keith for a second.
Yeah.
Final Jeopardy is airing in New York right now. And
It's his fault.
I was just
They're going to
watching
blame
what
me,
happened.
but it's his fault.
Yeah.
I just poured myself one of these.
Oh Lord, I wish I could join you. I got water.
Ah, yes,
Shouldn't make
he's
fun of
preparing
people with
for when he
cheese.
tapes this video a little bit later on regarding tonight's betting. And as I said, oh man, it is. You remember very quickly it's no longer the Tournament of Champions.
No, that was.
Leave it at that way. I have a DVR. Please don't ruin it for me. I really want to see this.
You will enjoy it.
You will enjoy it.
It's not the worst wager I've ever seen.
Interestingly enough, I went back and I looked, and the new contestant coordinator that they had is the.
Yes.
I feel as though Keith lampooned her betting slightly, from what I recall.
Oh yeah.
Amy?
She actually she confronted that. She confronted me with that when I was at the taping. But she used the term penultimate wager without any hint of irony, which I considered a success. So. I was happy about that. But no, she said, I realized I made a mistake, and I think it was fair that you said that, and I wish that I had seen some of your videos before. But she said she'd gotten a lot of crap, as Julia had after her Clavin.
Thanks.
Including from me, somewhat.
Not to digress about Amy, who we also talked about you, Keith, and what a terrible person you are. But she had the strategy that threw me off my game more than anybody else, which is she has been on other game shows. She's been on Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right, and she was the loudest person I played against, and it was very distracting. So here's to be on the show. You shout your little heart out, and you will throw people. Because, I mean, she really just projected to the rafters. She didn't need a microphone. And I think it was from being on the more high-energy shows, but it was real distracting.
I actually found that does work, being really, really loud. Because I'm naturally loud. My parents were always telling me, to quiet down. And for the one show that I did actually well, that I was competing against other people, it actually ended up being a big thing. Also because I was really tired and I was on 2 hours of sleep for a week and a half, that I couldn't control my volume, but it ended up being an advantage. So I think that's always a really good thing, not only to get on shows, but also to compete well against other people, because they're like, what is wrong with that guy? It's like how nobody in prison messes with the crazy guy. It's like, I'm trying to think of what the capital of Indonesia is, but this guy won't shut up, Work for me.
So that's your future career.
Is this the Anna Kournikova method?
Yeah.
It's an interesting trend, though, that they hired Amy, a former contestant, because Allison Shapiro from the publicist staff on Jeopardy, she's also a former contestant. And I'm wondering if they're going to just keep hiring people who were on the show, because,
You're next, Arthur.
I don't know. I'm not looking for work, but...
And there's Rocky. Don't forget about him.
Rocky, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will.
Trebek play on the Art Fleming one? I think he did, but...
I feel as I don't think he did.
We'll talk
Unless
about it
it
later.
was a celebrity.
Well, yeah,
Who?
celebrity, so... God knows.
Who's that, Ben?
He suggested Alex Trebek on the Art Fleming Jeopardy.
No, I think that's an urban legend. I think that they said that wasn't true, but it's something that people keep saying is true, because it sounds good.
Yes.
Yeah.
The TSA has adjusted the items that may be carried.
I will say, Brendan, that I am actually secretly not a fan of ties.
What? Okay, then. I think you're an awful person too now.
I think you've gotten into that scotch.
I think so. No, I like. I think it was cool as a novelty, but now that it's become the default method for wagering, and ties are happening, every week, every other week or so, it's a lot more anticlimactic and a lot less fun, and it takes a lot of people out of the pool. And I'm sure it makes Maggie's job a lot harder to make sure that she's staffing the right number of contestants and not flying people out from Cincinnati and then having to fly them back because she didn't have enough locals, or she had too many locals.
Yeah, no. Let me qualify my statement by I love the bet to tie. I don't mean betting to tie every single time because that's the same thing as bouncing all the time and doing it in the same way because then it completely defeats the point. I mean in very, very specific circumstances. It depends on the people you're playing. It depends on the score, how the board has been playing that game. I don't mean just indiscriminately just throwing out bet to tie wagers because obviously, first of all, I think that's annoying not only to watch but also to play. And I think also that kind of it would end if I was the people working at Jeopardy, I would completely understand with them trying to axe it out. But I meant I'm thinking maybe 10 to 20% of the time. I don't mean doing it all the time. But
Well,
I definitely agree because I was actually upset the couple times I did see that week. I think it was the week right before the tournament where we saw 2 ties in the same week and they seemed kind of indiscriminately just thrown around. That actually upsets me a lot. I was speaking more of a strategy in terms of a longer streak.
I mean, what I find interesting now that you have the tiebreaker is that it's an interesting question if you're in the lead. You know, are you going to go for the extra dollar or are you going to bet on the tiebreaker? You know, and is there ever a situation where you might do that? I haven't really thought about that, but you know, I was kind of like spitballing about it during the tournament. You know, is there ever a chance if you don't know what the tiebreaker category is going to be? Is there ever a time you'd rather stake it on the tiebreaker category than risk that extra dollar on the final Jeopardy category you do know? You know.
Yeah, I mean that's a disaster. I would feel better about it if they changed the format of the tiebreaker. Again, anybody who follows me on Twitter or has seen me on the other show knows how I feel about buzzer races as tiebreakers. I think it kind of takes away a big component of credibility when it's just the question could be what's the capital of this country, and they go watch, and it just becomes a buzzer race, and the person who won 10 games and is answering 50 questions right a show loses to some guy who was doing this a bunch of times and played Tekken as a kid. So I think if you want to change the format to what leads into the tiebreaker, you also got to change the tiebreaker. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm just going to have to bear watching it and people do this kind of stuff.
Well, what would you suggest though? Like, how would you do the tiebreaker then? As another final Jeopardy, or?
Yeah, well, I mentioned this, and the thing is, when you're not playing with experienced contestants, a lot of times interviews can go long, or you get a lot of uhs, so boards don't get played. But from a time point of view, if they could find a place to put it, if you've ever seen The Weakest Link, I think that final round, a penalty kick style, where it's just best of 5 questions, or best in 3 questions in the syndicated version, where it's basically just like penalty kicks, where they go, this question, you got it right, you got this question, and it's just best out of 5. I think that would be a great way to do it. Again, the time thing is a huge issue. I think now it's something crazy, like 45% of boards in regular play over the past couple months both boards don't get finished. So that's enough of a problem as it is. But if they can ever get the time thing fixed around or get people to pick clues, I think that would be a great way to settle it. Unfortunately, half an hour show.
Now, a couple more things I wanted to get at for the panel before we go. First up, bit of an interesting discussion I think we can have here, because I think we could get some debate going. Assume Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter are first and second on the top Jeopardy players of all time. Who's number 3?
Uh-oh.
And has that changed as a result of the past 2 weeks? Who do we think is the third?
No.
Don't count Watson.
Watson cheated because the hardest part is the buzzer, and that was what he was doing. I mean,
among human contestants, who is the third best ever?
I'll start, and it's no surprise to anybody who knows me that I will say it's Roger Craig. And obviously, since Roger wasn't in this tournament, I don't think it changed. The reason why I think he's number 3, and I past the top 5, I don't really rank them because I know too many of them, but I have Craig at 3. And here's the reason: I think of all the Jeopardy players, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, I think the amount of knowledge that he has is probably the best of any Jeopardy contestant. And I know it's kind of crazy making those blanket statements, but I think he is just outrageously knowledgeable across all fields. I think if that Battle of the Decades tournament was maybe just if they dialed it up a little, because I actually think this Tournament of Champions was harder than some rounds of the Battle of the Decades. I think if it had been a harder board, Roger would have separated a little bit more. I think that his play style is outrageously risky, and it gives me heart palpitations every time I watch anybody do it, let alone him. But he's the guy who pretty much kind of is the pioneer of that style in the modern times, and he does it the best. So it's the biggest risk reward thing, because sometimes you have a guy who can go up against VJ Balls and Stephanie Yass and win against them, and then on the other side you have a guy who was probably smart enough to win 20, 30 games and ended up winning 7 because it went the other way. So it's very, very flip-floppy, but his upside, I think he has the biggest upside.
I mean, his strategy, how many people would just crash and burn like that if they tried it, and which I agree with you is a testament to how much he knows. I don't disagree with you on that one.
But I will say this. I will say this. Sorry, but since I wasn't in the tournament and I don't have any, I'm going to continue with my rankings. I think a lot of people, because here's the thing about always talk about Brad and Ken, why people think Ken is better than Brad, is because Brad has won 24 games, and of those 24 games, 19 were against really, really, really good players, like champions, mega champions, super champions, all the prefix champions. And of Ken's about 77, 78 wins, 74 of them were against people who think Wilt Chamberlain played golf. That is an actual response from one of the other contestants. And so you can't really tell how good a person is by the number of games, because if a person loses one out of every 50 games and that was the third game, how does it measure? But I think I got a much better idea of pretty much everybody's skill level, but especially the ones that everybody's been talking about. I remember I hadn't watched a lot of season 29, but I watched Ben because that was when I was studying for one of the shows I was on, and then obviously Arthur and Julie, where everybody's talking and all the media, because this was such a media heavy tournament, and you guys are always surrounded by press and stuff like that. But I think I got a lot better skill, and to be 100% honest, my opinion of you guys actually went way up, because with harder material against actual contestants that can actually play, and where I can actually see wagers because you're not ahead by like 20,000 at the end, I think I got a much better kind of ranking of where people are. So I'm just leave it at that. By the way, I didn't get to say this at the beginning because you only asked people who were there. But when I watched this tournament, I just a comment. This tournament, I actually, by the way, the final was probably, aside from the Battle of the Decades tournament, which everybody kind of saw was going to be really, really good, you usually either see people do well or it be close, right? The last time the tournament was close, I think it was 2007, where all 3 players were still in contention, but they had subtotals of like 5,000, 6,000, 10,000. It was like, I think to go back to the last two-day match where everybody was still in contention and the finals were still tight 3-way, you have to go back to 2005 with the semifinals, Jerome Vered, Pam Mueller, and is Miller or Mueller? Anyway, Pam Mueller, Jerome Vered, and Frank Spangenberg. And that one, I think I got the same kind of feel from that final, where you're kind of like this the whole time and like, oh, what's gonna happen? And even when you get to the end of Double Jeopardy at the end of day 2, you're still like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. So yeah, that was all I had to say about that. I didn't get to say it because Andy only asked people who were there or played in it. But I really enjoyed that tournament. So congratulations to all of you. I know I spoke to some of you or Twitter over this, but yeah, great job.
Do we have any other people that think that somebody other than Roger may be the third best one ever?
Well, if you get a 2-headed monster and put Julia on one head and Arthur on the other, that player would not be number 3 but number 1.
My wife would find that very awkward.
Yeah, I was about to say they probably also would
I don't
to the
mean
hospital right away.
Arthur. I mean, I don't mean to sound special or anything, but I consider it very special that I'm the only person ever who's played against both Julia and Arthur at the same time. And it's weird because I wasn't worried about it because of the potato wedges and everything, and I probably should have been more worried than I was. But both of y'all together might not be number 3, but quite possibly number 1.
Yeah, there's not a
Number
whole
3
lot
is
of
probably
overlap
Pam
in
Mueller.
the knowledge. It's really good.
Thanks.
Okay. And on the lighter side, I think hashtag fake TOC 2014 was one of my own favorite parts of the tournament as well. I believe it was that Julia, that was you who came up with that idea, right?
Yes, my best idea ever.
Yeah, it was really good.
It was
I
great.
wasn't trying out. That was a good idea.
So I'm just curious as to if you saw much of fake TOC 2014, and what was everyone's favorite post from that hashtag over the last couple of weeks?
Rainey wearing the giraffe costume. Made me laugh.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember who came up with that. It was one of the other women, but they were saying, might have been Sarah McNitt, and she said something about, because she had like a leopard print top on, but she said, but below the podium she was wearing a giraffe outfit. It's a bizarre mental picture.
Yeah.
I think it was Ben. It was such an inside baseball joke, but it's like when Arthur plays against Andrew Moore and they cancel each other out and just take the category straight from top to bottom. And then I actually did. And it's funny because we all knew from watching Jeopardy that I was not the only person to do the bounce, but America apparently doesn't know that, and so it's.
I think half of America doesn't know that there are 3 players in Jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah, man. The amount of.
I think half of America still doesn't know that there is such a thing as a tiebreaker. No, actually, I think a lot of America thinks that ties are just instantly broken, so for a lot of people it won't change, but sorry, the rest of America. I
didn't see it, but I didn't see it, but I think my hometown newspaper had something like Japinga goes down after my quarterfinal game when I had actually advanced. And I had to explain the format so many times that it became kind of anticlimactic, because you have all these people watching, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, it's the one time where you don't play to win. It's just like, oh, you didn't win. I was like, yeah, but it was good enough.
Yeah, the worst part is
weird
people who
party.
know enough about Jeopardy to know that like how much you should wager, but then don't know the wild card. Because I was in my tournament, I got a wild card, and I didn't bet to win. I bet to get the wild card, and I got a wild card. But people came up to me and were like, "Hey, so you didn't win?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Because I was like, I'm not gonna explain it to them, and they were like, "Well, you should have bet everything, stupid." And I was like, "Well, it's so." It's really, really tough trying to explain that to people. So I just kind of was like, yeah, I lost. Don't watch me at all, please.
Yeah.
I had 3 wild card numbers in mind, and Keith, you saw me trying to figure out what they were going to be. I had a 25%, 50%, and 75%. And I feel like Arthur with sports, turns out I never needed him, but that wild card that added some fun to it.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. We were having a party when my quarterfinal game was on, and it was kind of loud at the place we were having the party at, so all they saw were the scores at the end of the game, and they didn't really realize what was going on. There was this collective sigh because I didn't win. Oh. Alex called me over by the podium, and the whole bar just going, "What? She's in the semifinals! What?"
Surprise!
Thank goodness you were on the last day, right?
Yeah.
I will tell you one awkward point that the wild cards had, because you're not allowed to spoil results. If you're on one of the earlier games, for example, this would be Rainy this year, or I was in the Monday game in my TOC, and I was sitting through Thursday at 3rd place in the wild card rankings, and that was the same with Rainy until Friday. And so you have to tell everyone, well, I'm in X position for wild card, and you have to keep watching to see if I make it.
I sat next to
you. You'd say, well, yeah, it didn't work out.
I'm sorry, Keith. I sat next to Randy on that last game, and we were just clutching each other's hand and everything because I don't know what it's like to have to sit through a wild card because I went first and I won outright somehow. But yeah, but she came back as the alternate and she played very, very well in my opinion. But that had to be tough.
Yeah.
If she'd only gotten Julia a little bit sicker, the opportunity was there. So it was a test of character for her.
All it took was to make me stand up for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I felt like I was going to die, so it would have been really easy.
Yeah, that couldn't have been pleasant.
There were definitely a lot of references to the Michael Jordan flu game, as first proposed by Josh Frumpkin on our last hangout, I believe. But we're at the 47-minute mark at this point, and Ben has a whole bunch of happy people on Reddit who want to ask him lots and lots of questions. So I think we just about
nice
need
folks
to.
on Reddit.
I'd actually just click the open button, so y'all are definitely welcome to come along. Arthur, Julia, Sandy, Mark, they might have questions for y'all too, and Keith too, and the rest of y'all too. So come along. They might be bugging y'all for some stuff. So make it a joint thing.
A joint thing. Okay. On
medical marijuana is legal in Michigan.
No, I was scratching my lip and so on and so forth.
I'm on a moving train.
Okay, so before I log off, I'm going to ask the usual question: does any panelist have any other panelist any questions at this point, or I'm just going through my own stuff to see if there are any further questions that I should be asking people, and it does not appear as such. So, being that all the panelists are quiet, I want to thank everyone for coming out once again. Once again, thank you and congratulations on your performances to Sandie, Mark, Julia, Ben, Arthur. Well done, guys. Thank you once again to Brandon for all of your work and all of your numbers that you brought tonight. Keith, please don't get too drunk before you tape your own show tonight.
It's more fun like that, isn't it?
I suppose. Yeah, good point. That should be fun and interesting and nice. I look forward to watching that when I get home from my own work tonight. So, once again, thanks to Jeannie. I'm glad you're able to pop in and out and keep listening to us. Apparently, the Wi-Fi where she is giving her some issues. And I want to thank Leanne for finally being able to join us as well with the video. As she said, the Chromebook works for something. So, thank you all for tuning in. We were definitely over a dozen viewers throughout most of the evening tonight, so lots of people were watching. Thank you all for tuning in. Our next week, when we go back to regular episodes, should be fun and interesting, and we'll have lots to talk about. Let us know at thejeopardykfan.com if you were on at any point and are interested in joining us to talk about next week's episodes. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great night.